welcome to the program. Week 4, you join me and Mark for our what is now becoming a weekly update. So, Mark, great to see you. Hello.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me back again, Richard. Got a huge engagement with the program at the moment. We've got 76 riders all up and running, split between the 3 different groups that we had. Group 1, fully coached by myself. Group 2, doing their own structured training, and then Group 3, riders doing pretty much nothing, actually.
Enjoying themselves, probably, more than the other 2 groups. We'll see about that in March, and that's the whole point, isn't it? So
that was exactly the point of it, yeah.
I suppose we wanted to give the message, didn't we, now we're on week 4, that that's the kind of number we wanted, and in actual fact, it's more than we sort of set our benchmark at. So brilliant news there.
Yeah, we wanted 20 in each group, didn't we? Really, so around 60 riders, but actually we got more than we could have hoped for. So obviously, with any analysis of statistics, the more people that you get, the better the data can be. So yeah, it was a really good turnout.
Cool. Okay, brilliant. And people are doing what we need them to do. So if you're on the program and you're starting to think, is this what I expected? Is it going in the direction I thought it'd be going? Then yeah, we're getting what we want. Remind ourselves that this is a study of different training effects on serious amateur athletes, and we're going to be able to say that doing this does that to you. And so, guys, keep doing this is what you're doing, and we're getting what we need out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the biggest pool of riders we've got are the guys and girls that are being coached by me, and as this process evolves, they will naturally drift away from that and become less engaged with the coaching process. And that's exactly the same as I experience as a coach as well, is that you get people come on, experience it for a month or 2 and then drift away because it's not for them. And what we'll do then is we'll move those riders down into the Group 2, because then they can pick pieces out of the program that I set and structure their own training around that.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll naturally then equalize out all 3 groups.
Brilliant. Cool. Okay. So this week, as we are doing now, last week we had Jason really insightful on what he's doing and balancing his work-life sport balance. This week, Terry Lee joins us. So let's go to Terry. Okay, so Terry, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Rich. Good to see you.
Yeah, thanks for joining in your busy day. And I know you've done an FTP this morning, so surely you want to get rid of us and relax as soon as possible.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think we'll talk about that. But yeah, it was a painful morning, but I'll share more of that, I'm sure.
Well, how did it go then, Terry? You might as well share now. Don't leave it hanging.
They're just horrible, Mark. So and hi, Mark. I think it was. It's the necessary evil, isn't it? We know that they're a great gauge to understand, particularly with some of the stuff that we've got going up, particularly being involved with a program. It's a great way to understand where your current level is. 20 minutes doesn't sound like a long time, never does. So I did an FTP back in July. I think doing it this morning, that last 5 minutes in particular, I think that's the closest I've ever come to being sick.
It sounds like you paced it perfectly
then. Well, yeah, but painful. That would be, and definitely glad it was over.
Good.
Yeah, absolutely. They're an unpleasant, necessary evil, but you're right. It's good for taking a snapshot of where your current fitness is and setting training zones up. So, no, well done.
No one's got in touch and said, thanks for putting me through an FTP. I really enjoyed it. So, but still a chance, anybody? If you did. Terry, you've got a really interesting story to tell us, haven't you? And the challenge that you're putting yourself up for next year is enormous, and everyone would love to hear about that. So, stage is yours. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, thanks, Rich. And I think when we've met a number of times through the events that you do so successfully, and the program seems to be a fitting sort of segue into delivering this. I think the best place to start is, formerly a runner of some description. 10 years ago this year, I lost my father. I think when that happened to me, it made me want to do, as everybody does, when you lose somebody that close to you, you reflect on some of the things that you're doing well and perhaps some of the things that you're not. And one of the things I naturally wanted to do was run a marathon, because he'd run 3 in his life, but I'd actually never been there for them. So it was my tribute, if that makes sense. Coming away from that, so that would be 10 years ago next year. I've always been interested, maybe even bordering on obsessed with kind of personal challenges. I haven't always been into fitness, but it's a great way of being able to get away, particularly at the moment, get away from it all and do something different. So I've been playing around with an idea for a couple of years around, mileage totals, sportive totals. I've ridden and been part of some big events. And I wanted to do something that was kind of of equal standing. So the idea first came about that I'd do it in 2020. That was before COVID came along. The idea was 20,000 kilometers in 2020 with 20 events to support it. So that's roughly 12,500 miles. And of course, lockdown 1 kind of blew all that apart. So then it got me thinking about, as we've had time to think about, well, what could that manifest itself as? I kind of wanted to be at a place where I wanted to take cycling more seriously as an amateur, I guess, which is exactly how the program is kind of benefiting me. So I thought about taking that challenge again and getting myself a cycling coach, of which I started that in August, and put it to my coach that this was the kind of thing I was thinking. And in typical coaching style, wanting to get the best out of you, but equally push you to that next level, his reaction was, well, if you're going to do it next year, it needs to be 21,000 kilometers, not 20,000. So that's 13,125 miles.
Wow.
And I'm looking to support that with 21 sportives.
Okay.
And that's where Rich, you and the Velo 29 team come in, because most of those are going to be with you guys, I think.
You're
From
doing a lot with us, which is
brilliant.
Thank you.
The beast and all sorts of stuff. So a big challenge, but one I'm really up for.
Yeah, that's amazing. And how do you feel the engagement with the coach helps you with that? What do you look to gain out of that relationship?
Yeah, it's an interesting thought, Mark. I think the first thing I'd say was actually doing. So I did 3 Velo 29 events this year, as I'd started with my coach. And there's something psychological about knowing somebody is watching you.
Yeah,
in a funny kind of way. So because they're aware of the event that you're doing, they're aware of whether, and at that stage it was still relatively new in our relationship, but that somebody else has got a keen interest in your performance. And that certainly adds, I'd be intrigued to see how it plays out next year, but if that adds extra motivation, I think that's definitely there. I think there's also something about, I've never naturally been data obsessed, but I'm acclimatizing to it. Having a coach that's then able to also play your, particularly an event back to you to say, actually, here's where I think you were great. Whether that's pace, whether that's your climbing ability, or maybe you need to think about this. So there's always something to work on. So I think it's just about that extra edge.
Yeah, great. That's really interesting, and that's actually one of the main feedback elements I get is that that person sat on your shoulder giving you the emotional support and the encouragement to do things that you don't necessarily want to do. I think it's a key part of the coaching relationship. So that's good. And yes, pass on our thanks to your coach Ian for letting us view your data. That's very kind of him.
Yeah, of course I will. And Ian's great, So the other thing I would say, and it's interesting, you talk about the encouragement. There's nothing like, particularly if it's all right, we've been blessed with pretty good weather, but if it's not a particularly nice morning or the weather's not with you, seeing a little comment pop up on your Training Peaks just with it could be as simple as a thumbs up, or that's a great session, or really like this part of it. That can be a real boost. It makes a big difference.
Interesting. I've never really worked with a coach, and people have asked me to help coach them, and I've always declined. And I think because I probably miss some of that empathy that a coach needs to, and especially to relate to. And Mark, you'll tell us you're coaching people who probably have bought a bike and are riding for the first time, and also people who are elite and are wanting to get that a little bit better, and to sort of flick between what those different people are relating to, I think I would struggle with, and hence have always declined.
Yeah, there's obviously a huge spectrum of riders, as we know, all training for different goals and for different reasons, and it is striking that balance between having the knowledge to bring them on physically, but also, like you say, the empathy to know that they've got family and work and various other commitments pulling on time constraints. And yeah, there is always a balance between being an amazing rider, but also being an amazing family person or an amazing work person as well. So yeah, absolutely.
There's an element of selfishness has to come into it, I think, especially something like what you're doing, Terry. There'll be compromises outside of your cycling to achieve that, I'm sure.
I think there's a couple of things. So might be a strange example, but I read when I was doing my marathon training, I read a book by a lady called Kate Percy, and it's called Go Faster Food, and she talks about so she was a marathon runner for years, and she talked about the first thing that you should do in any big challenge is sit down with your loved ones and explain to them what you're about to embark on. So the early mornings, the late nights, not picking up the kids, not being able to cook or whatever it is. And I think there's an element of that in it. I think there's also a cycle, forgive the pun, but there's this bit around, I'm fortunate in that I found cycling, and I really do mean that, in that I think it's my link between being a great husband, pretty good at my job, and being able to sort of rotate them all. And of course that comes with its challenges always. There's moments where you don't want to get on the bike, or you don't want to go to work or whatever. But that balancing act, I think, finding I think if everybody could find their cycling, and of course I would say just go and buy a bike, but that's the bit I think we're all striving for. It's the balance.
Just buy a bike and enter a Velo 29 event.
Absolutely.
Have you got a plan then about how you're going to tackle next year? Because the psychology of it is capturing my imagination and breaking it down by week. What are you going to do?
Well, I think there's three. Well, currently there's 3 routes to it. So there are 20 event weeks. So those will naturally come with a different approach because you're building up to the big event, particularly the Yorkshire Beast. I think outside of the 15 or so Velo 29 events that I'm doing, which, by the way, the 3 days in Yorkshire looks amazing.
Excitement around that.
Yeah, that looks great. So I think there's a couple of others I've got in there. One of which is the Dragon, one of which is the Fred Whitton. So those will be big events, but will naturally, whilst they're different training weeks, they'll be naturally bigger in terms of mileage. That then allows you to sort of build in I suppose what you call a base week for the rest of the year. And my thinking, and I need to talk this through with Ian, will be that you almost do it in blocks. So there's a block of, 8 weeks, 10 weeks. And then there is a natural week, which is a much lesser mileage week to give some respite. And I think if we can work it out so that you have 5 or 6 of those a year, as I say that, I realise how mad that is. But it gives at least a little bit of, you can work in those blocks. So that's where my head's at currently. It might change, and no doubt will.
I'm sure.
You're
going to have to be flexible and evolve through the year, I suppose, aren't you?
Yeah.
I would be thinking about getting miles in the bank the way it would work for me. I think I'd like to have that. Okay, it's whatever, 250 a week. So right, okay, I'm going to do 400, and then I can sort of ease it. But that,
relax.
Yeah, if that's the right terminology.
if that's the word.
But then
No,
Mark's about to say you'll burn out and don't do that. So
I don't know. You'd be done by August then, and then what do you do?
yeah, well, true. Yeah.
Yeah, it's important to have those down weeks. It's something to focus on, isn't it? You know, if you can get through a big block of work, you know, regardless of what that is. You know, it doesn't have to be cycling related. If you know that there's a down period at the end of it, and you can just relax. But also, as Richard said, I mean, we'll check in with you periodically through next year, because it's a really interesting challenge outside of the program, and it would be interesting to see how you are approaching it, whether you are ahead of schedule and banking those miles to give you a little bit of respite later in the year, when you will clearly be a little more fatigued than at the start. So it'd be interesting to see how you're getting on all through the year.
We'll be sending you back out at the finish line of a spot, Eve, won't we? If I know you're behind, yeah, you've done 100 miles. I'm really sorry, Terry, but you can't have the medal until you've done another 20.
You've got to do another loop.
Yeah, which is the short route, and we'll leave the signs up for you. No, but yeah, we'll check it. I think it's an intriguing story. I'm mega interested in it, and I think a lot of people who engage with us will be as well, and I'll all be. You become a bit of a mini star. You'll be at the events, and they'll all want to meet the man.
Who knows? I don't know about that, but I think that there's the program couldn't be any better time for me, Rich. I think when you put it out there, and I saw it, I think I was listening to the Velo 29 podcast has been a brilliant accompaniment to 2020 in so many ways. And listening to it that evening, it was, I think I kind of came away from the podcast emailing you to say, yeah, this definitely fits.
You said you'd stop the podcast halfway through to write me an email, I think was the first person to get in touch about the program. I remember it well. Cool. Well, listen, we wish you the very best of luck with it. Anything that we can do to help, we're here. And we'll keep checking in. And keep it up, Terry. Big, massive challenge, and well done for taking it on.
Yeah,
brilliant.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Big challenge, and wish you all the best of luck, and keep us in touch with what's going on.
Yeah, of course I will do. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Rich.
Take care, Terry. Bye for now. So really awesome to hear from Terry. I think we should remind ourselves Terry has a full-time job, and taking on this is on top of his work, his family life, and anything else that he might do. So I think it's super insightful. I can't wait to hear the story and how he gets on. I'm sure there'll be some ups and downs through the year.
Yeah, what a fascinating story. I'm really intrigued to see how this all unfolds over the next 14 months is what it'll be. I mean, Terry's story is entirely typical of the type of rider that comes to me to ask to be helped in a way. You know, they have a daunting goal, of a great big target of something that they want to achieve, and they're not entirely sure how they need to train in order to get there. You know, it doesn't have to be all about elite racing and the best 10-mile time trial results. It can be about a full 12-month goal is what he's intending to target.
Must be quite a unique training for that, because in terms of the preparation you would do, I mean, I guess a lot of it's just going to come as the journey progresses, isn't it? And it's going to be about keeping yourself in good shape and not overdoing it, not underdoing it, balancing that kind of.
Yeah, for Terry, there's so many more elements to think about, isn't there? It's not just about 20-minute power. That's not the be-all and end-all of what he's trying to achieve. You know, it's about spending time on the bike day after day after day and not getting injured, and making sure your diet is good so that you're not getting ill, and all the various things that mean that his goal isn't going to be pushed further and further down the year. You know, you can start missing days, can't you, and having to try and catch them up.
That's going to be frightening, isn't it? If you were to miss a week, and I mean, I know Terry's going to tackle it in blocks in different ways, but if you spread it across the year and you did 250 a week and you miss a week, you've got to do 500 the next week, and that's that then becomes frightening.
But but then Ian's there to support him, to make sure that the dark days where he doesn't want to climb on the bike, is that there's someone sat there watching him, encouraging him, invested in his goals, invested in him achieving his targets, and that will inspire Terry, hopefully, to push on through those darker days.
I don't know of many people who ride that kind of mileage, and my cycling goes back 4 decades, yeah. And it used to be all about mileage. And I remember as a kid reading books written by I don't know, Bernardino or something like that, and it might as well have been one page and said you must ride 8 hours a day if you want to be a pro cyclist. And of course, as time's progressed, that's been thrown away, and rightfully so. And I even say, you know, don't fill your water bottles up and stuff like that, so you appreciate a drink more during a race and stuff. And that's all gone out the window, hasn't it? But do you have any engaged anyone else who does the huge mileages these days?
Yeah, there's I mean, not day in, day out, but I have riders that train for very long Audaxes or the Race Across America, for example. So it's a really big events, but are spread over maybe 10 days or 2 weeks. But Terry's riding is spread over a whole 12 months, and it's a very different approach again. There's going to be a lot of mentorship, which would be one of the key elements. You know, the psychological side of things rather than just the physical side of things. So yeah, I have coached riders who've got big aspirations like Terry. So yeah, they are out there.
They are out there, but yeah, it's not the miles are everything like they used to be. I get outside of what Terry's doing this time of year is a little bit of a tough one, isn't it? We're blessed with all right weather as it happens now, but the next event probably feels a long way in the future, and keeping yourself in some sort of shape is maybe a bit harder this time of year. Do you see people trying to dip off is November and December a tough month? Or?
Well, yes, it used to be, didn't it? I mean, we've got all sorts of virtual cycling platforms now where we can accumulate miles or kilometres virtually, and Terry is combining both the virtual and the real miles in order to achieve his target for the year. So, you know, it's not safe or sensible to go out in the middle of January when the beast from the east is blanketing the country in snow and ice. And the worst thing he could do is try and push the real miles out, doing a 50-mile day in the Yorkshire Dales, when he could just be sat on Swift or Ruby or the Peloton bike or whatever you've got and getting the miles in there. So it has become a lot easier.
We're blessed these days, aren't we? Smart trainers are a really helpful thing. I wish they'd been around when I was racing, because I remember some horrible winters.
Yeah. I mean, they're not essential, are they, for training? But they really do help with the engagement over the darker months, definitely.
They do. Cool. Well, let's leave it there for this week. You guys who are taking part, thank you again. Keep it up. Get in touch. We'd love to hear your stories. These interviews, we're going to do them every week, and we're going to, even around Christmas, we're going to do more of them. So if you want to feature, give us a shout. But if not, we'll be picking on somebody. So thank you, Mark. Thank you again, Terry.
Thanks, Richard.
And we'll be back next week. Take care, guys.